I honestly can't believe I'm holding this. I have played this. I have completed this. The series has been a part of my life pretty much for as long as I can remember, and now we've finally reached its conclusion, the end of an era, but also the start of a new one. Let's talk about that. Just to be clear, this video will not contain any spoilers. I will talk about the worlds themselves, but not the story within them. I will talk about the atmosphere in bits and pieces, but not as it relates to the story itself. This video should be 100% safe to watch. If you want spoilers, however, you should check out my spoiler review by clicking the card in the corner here. If it's not out yet, just wait a couple of days. It should be here soon. Now, let's get started. This is the Retro Cave, and welcome to In Retrospect. First things first, Sora has a phone now, which serves two very simple purposes within the game. The first and most important reason is Sora being able to call other characters, so Nomura doesn't have to bother writing an actually well-paced story. The second is for Sora to take selfies. No, literally. The Gummy phone has a camera function which allows you to take pictures of things inside the game. It's meant to take pictures of lucky marks, which will reward you for taking a certain number of them. This is also how you unlock the secret ending, which might be the most random way of unlocking a secret ending in a Kingdom Hearts game to this day, but I kind of like it. Since Sora can now take selfies, the other characters also need phones in order for Sora to call them. The loading screens have now been spiced up with little Instagram posts the characters themselves made. I mean, I guess it's better than a black screen? It's just so random and serves no function whatsoever. The Gummy phone also allows you to play games on it. These are based on the classic Mr. Game & Watch games, which most people these days only know because he's in Super Smash Bros. But hey, it's a neat way to spend some extra time in this game, but certainly it's not the best part of the game by far. As a matter of fact, it's probably the most boring and useless part. Especially since these games can be found inside chests, which gets your hope up. Maybe it'll be a useful item. And no, it's just another stupid game. The actual gameplay though, it's very fun to play. The first thing you'll notice is that you start with a number of abilities you wouldn't expect to start with, such as scan, dodge roll, air slide, and some more movement based abilities. Of course, as the game progresses you get more of these, so there still is a progression in your movement options, but the game doesn't ever get to the point where you're moving around as freely and more importantly as smooth as in Kingdom Hearts 2. That being said though, as of the writing of this review, I am level 42, so it's possible that some level up abilities will improve that. But the game doesn't have much to offer after you beat the final boss. There's almost no post-game content. Granted, that could be added with DLC later, but for now, the game is just a little lacking. Still, the fact that this is not an exact copy of Kingdom Hearts 2 was to be expected. It's been 15 years since that game was made, and both the technology this game runs on and the desires of the players have changed considerably in that time. So, given some time, I may get used to this new engine here, and the possibilities are endless, I would dare say. To start, your parties now don't have a 3-member limit, meaning that when a Disney character joins you, you don't have to swap out Donald or Goofy. Instead, the character will just join you, making your team go up to 4 or even 5 in some cases. I'm not sure how I feel about this though. I do love them, but at the same time, I think picking which characters you take with you is somewhat of a strategic part of the game. Would you swap out Donald or Goofy? It was all based on the strength of the character you gained for that world. At least in theory. In practice it was usually just a good idea to stick with Donald and Goofy, with just a few exceptions, all of which would have you get rid of Goofy since Donald can heal you when he decides to. So I think increasing the party limit was a good move. And since you now have more people in your party, let's also let Sora equip multiple Keyblades. Not like in dry forms from Kingdom Hearts 2, as a matter of fact dual wielding is gone altogether, but you can now equip up to 3 Keyblades, you can swap them out mid-combat. Changing from melee to balanced or magic based Keyblades. Or you can make your choices dependent on the Keyblade transformations every Keyblade has now. These transformations are more or less like the command styles from Birth by Sleep, but they are based on the Keyblades you're using instead of the commands you're using. I mean, yeah, there is no command system, so that's a little obvious. Most Keyblades have a unique transformation, changing up your attack styles, combos, and even the way you use magic in some cases. There are some repeats which are just palette swaps from earlier Keyblades, which is a shame since you no longer have to keep changing to a newer Keyblade just to get its power. You can upgrade Keyblades now in a synthesis-like way. Using certain materials you can increase the power of any Keyblade, which means even the Kingdom Key is somewhat usable against the final boss, and the power difference comes more from the Keyblade transformation than it does from the stats. This allows you to really choose your own playstyle much more than the games before this. Along with the Keyblade transformations, Antiform also makes a return, but it's now called Rage Mode, and it's actually a little bit more powerful now. It still won't allow you to use magic, so healing is no option, and in order to power yourself up in this form, you need to use up some of your HP, making it a very risky thing to do. But changing back into your normal self from this form is much easier too, as long as you have a situation command to use. Situation commands are a little bit like reaction commands, mixed with the special character moves you used to have in Kingdom Hearts 2. The main difference being is you don't waste all of your MP on them, and they are generally also a little more powerful. And as stated before, they also return Sora from the Rage Mode back to his normal self, so he can heal. And with this remaining MP, you can actually use some magic. There is a lot fewer spells in this game than you might expect. Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 both have a long list of spells, and the more recent games all have command style combat, which pretty much means they've got a shitload of magic available to you. This game goes with some basic elemental magic though. Fire, Blizzard, Arrow, Thunder and Cure all make a return, joined by the new Water element. Even though your options might be more limited, the actual effectiveness of your magic has increased so much that this might be the first game where I relied more so on magic than melee combat to kill enemies in the whole series. Thundaga is so overpowered and I love it. Using a spell a couple of times will allow you to cast a grand magic version of it, which just means Fire lets you cast a single Fire-Ra and Fire-Ra lets you cast a single Fire-Raga, which doesn't sound so interesting, but once you actually get Fire-Raga, or any other Ga spell for that matter, you'll be able to use the Zartier spells as grand magic, which are broken beyond any reason and generally kill everything close to you which doesn't have an unreasonable amount of HP. Which a lot of enemies do, I must admit. You do deal a lot of damage, but enemies generally have more HP too. The difference between strong Heartless and bosses is smaller than ever in this game. But the bosses still feel like bosses. Not because they have more HP, not because they have some stupid boss armor. No, they actually have their own unique attacks and ways to fight them. You can really tell that a boss is a one-of-a-kind enemy, even if it doesn't have much more HP than any other enemy. Anyway, we're not done with the combat options yet, because you also have Attraction Flow and Links, which are both more or less summons. Links are just straight up summons, but Attraction Flow are special attacks that you can sometimes randomly get, which allow you to damage your enemies by riding a Disney ride. I'm not making this up, I swear, it's more awesome than it sounds. And then there is your Shotlock, which is just the same as Shotlocks from Birth by Sleep, but these, just like the Keyblade transformations, are based on what Keyblade you wield while using them. With all of these options, it's a little overwhelming. It does allow you to pick which forms of combat fit best for your playstyle, and once you get used to the controls of the game, you'll find yourself chaining them together more and more often, using a combo then going into a Keyblade transformation, followed by a situation command knocking back the enemy, leaving them open for a Shotlock. These things do happen once you get used to the insane amount of options available to you, and if you would rather just spam one of these over and over again, that's a real option too. Shotlocks have gotten a new use though, the air step. While aiming a Shotlock, you can also point your camera to certain objects and press square to leap towards them, which doesn't use any of your Shotlock focus like the Shotlock attack does. This is only rarely required within the game, but if you do remember to do this, you will save yourself a huge amount of walking around in the enormous worlds. Generally, your movement hasn't been upgraded as much as the size of the world, meaning you'll spend a lot of time walking around without anything happening. Flow motion isn't as overpowered anymore either, which is a good thing. But that means the only way of getting around quickly has been nerfed significantly, and since the movement is nowhere as smooth or quick as it was in Kingdom Hearts 2, It gets a little annoying when you have to walk around a lot, which you don't have to do often luckily, but there are times when I felt annoyed with the game for making me walk, especially in the Frozen world where you have to go up the same mountain like 3 times. And even though you go up using different routes, it's still just annoying to do. So if we could fix that in the next game, that'd be great. Either don't make worlds big just for the sake of being big, or give me something to do while I walk around while nothing is happening. And no, I don't mean more enemies, because that gets old after a while too. Running up walls is cool though, but it doesn't gain me much if I don't have any great mid-air movements. You do get glide towards the end of the game, but it doesn't work as smoothly and isn't as responsive as in previous games. I'll tell you what moves around better though, the gummy ship. The world map has been changed up. You used to be able to fly around in it, now it's just a matter of selecting a place to take off from, which you do by cycling through the possible embarking locations. Not even with a cursor like in Kingdom Hearts 1, which makes it a mess to select a world you want to travel to. Once selected however, oh boy, you get placed in an open world. Kind of. You can fly around freely, unlike games before where you were on rails and just had to shoot things. Now you'll run into enemies as you travel, which also means you'll usually be able to avoid enemies if you want to. This also means that it is a little less exciting than in a game like Kingdom Hearts 2. You might have had little control over your ship in that game, but as a result, in a very well made on-rail shooter level, whereas this game provides you with a somewhat decent free flight gameplay. Something being restricted or curated isn't a bad thing if it means better quality for the end product. And as far as gummy ships go, this game does not offer better quality than Kingdom Hearts 2. While we're on the topic of ships though, let's talk about the kind that sail through water instead of space, because we do return to the Pirates of the Caribbean world, which now is more than just Port Royal. It lets you sail your own ship, complete with ship battles and all. You can get off the ship anytime you like to explore the island scattered around the map. In all honesty, it feels like a more stripped down version of Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. The freedom has nothing to do with the size of the map. This is a perfect example of that. The map itself is rather small compared to a game like Assassin's Creed 4 or Rogue, but being able to let go of your ship and jump into the water to explore the islands around without having to go through menus or a loading screen, well, I might just have a soft spot for pirate games. And while we're here, remember how awful this world looked in Kingdom Hearts 2? That might have been the worst decision in that game. Now, however, this world looks absolutely amazing. Of course, it's not quite lifelike, but in certain moments, especially the ones where you see no human faces, or when you see them very, very closely, I could have sworn they just got actual footage from the film in the middle of a cutscene. That's how good it looks. But the fact that I even entertained the idea, and the fact that even if they did cross-cut between engine footage and film footage, it still holds up. There's a lot of factors coming together to make this world look specifically so good, but it's not just this world, every world looks amazing. After playing 0.2 A Fragmentary Passage, I was afraid that Kingdom Hearts 3 wouldn't look any good, because let's face it, that game isn't very pleasing to the eye, it looks plasticky. The characters and backgrounds clash very much in art style, things look inconsistent, and generally, even within the short 2 hours that game took, it was a bit of a mess. But Kingdom Hearts 3, while there has a couple of moments where characters look a little odd, it generally looks fantastic. The worlds featured in this game are now more modern Disney films, meaning they don't have to be translated from 2D animation to 3D like Aladdin, The Lion King, Mulan and so on. We now have worlds based on Frozen, Tangled, Toy Stories, Monsters Incorporated, and that makes it very easy to compare them to the source material. Tangled just downright looks like the movie. The shading is a little different and at some points the textures aren't as detailed, but I really think the game actually looks better than its movie counterpart. Frozen also comes close to its source material. And of course, Let It Go was forced into this game because money. And mostly just falls apart because of the snow. The snow physics like they were in the movie just wouldn't be possible inside the game with current hardware, so I can't complain too much, but the fact is, it just doesn't look as nice as Tangled does inside the game. Then there is Toy Story. Oh boy, Toy Story. The first animated feature-length film. Including a Pixar movie in a game was a daring move to do, since Pixar always decides to do really difficult things to render, so it's obvious why you would pick Toy Story. Their first long movie, which is over 20 years old by now, and finally we're in an era of technology where we can render this quality live in 60 frames per second. And once again, I actually think the characters and shading looks better in this game than it does in the actual movie. Which is mostly a matter of art style, I think, but still, I am very impressed by this game to pull off something like this. Which is why I'm so confused why Monsters Incorporated was included in this game. There is no way in hell that Sully's hair would have ended up looking anywhere near as good as in the original. And while I had hoped that there would be some progression between the early trailers we got for this world and the actual product, Sully still looks more like a porcupine than a bear. This Sully, I want to give a big hug. This Sully, I'd be rather afraid he would stab me with his hair. Which leaves us with just the music, which is as important a part for any Kingdom Hearts game as the story. Music sets the mood, makes you feel emotional impacts of a scene. The series has built up a library of music over the years. Every important character has its own theme by now, which ends up meaning that there's not a lot of new music for this game. Sure, the songs are somewhat reimagined and the Disney worlds do have some pretty decent new music tracks, but generally I am a little disappointed with the soundtrack for this game. Near the end of the game there are a couple of songs which actually do sound pretty good, but because of spoiler reasons I won't go into more detail about those. Kingdom Hearts wasn't the best game in the universe, it was alright, but later games improved on it a lot. And while this game might be the conclusion of this story arc, it's also the start of a very new one. So I expect games after this will improve on this game, much like Kingdom Hearts 2 improved on Kingdom Hearts 1.